Welcome, Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street. Well, good morning to you too. And small business lenders to help it grow. That will be up. Chris Hearn out of Florida. Chris, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
To you and yours, and welcome. Wow, I'm sorry. Katie, Dave, and Lance, Joseph is taking the day off, so we will let him do that. And substituting for Joseph will be Michael. And what we're going to do is we're going to answer a bunch of questions today, and basically nothing new has come out of Washington. But let's go through all these questions that we can answer, and let's go to the poll question. Number one, I'm interested in this. This is getting a lot of coverage, but I'm more interested in how it's affecting you. And will you remote work at your laying institution remaining throughout 2021? In other words, you, Chris, as a C-suite, you are giving your people the option. I assume you obviously need to have some people in there. But what is your management philosophy on this, Chris?
I don't have a problem with this at all. We were actually doing remote work for about 2/3 of our total employee base before the pandemic. So we continue to do that. We like to go where we have high quality folks that fit within our culture that do a great job, and it doesn't really matter to me if they work remote or they're housed in one of our two offices.
Chris, how do you handle passing on the company culture to someone? I come on, I'm new, I'm sitting at my computer. Every company has their own culture. How do you pass it on to your new hires?
Well, it's not easy, Bob, in this new era that we're in. But we have enough conference calls, Zoom calls, in-person meetings, what have you, that I think people pick it up pretty quick. We're pretty differentiated from a lot of folks in our industry, so I think if they have any inclination to it at all, they quickly recognize those things. But yeah, it's going to take a little bit. We just put some offer letters out to a number of folks yesterday, and when we onboard them, we'll see how much different this is than it has been in the last year or so when we onboarded new people.
Yeah, now I don't think we've answered that question. What percentage of the time are your people on calls with other people, and what percentage of the time are they by themselves? Lance, what's your situation?
I am on calls for a significant portion of my day. I would say, Bob, at least 50% of my day I'm either on calls with team members or calls with customers. But I would estimate at least 50% of every day is Zoom meetings, conference calls, discussions, but it's a pretty significant amount of time.
Chris, is that in line with you?
I'm probably a little bit less, just because I've got other things I got to take care of in terms of stakeholders and other things. But I think our people are probably a little bit less than that. I think I'd probably guess it's 25 to 30% of the time is spent with either borrowers directly or with their fellow team members. Yeah.
Yeah, Katie. Katie, you and I touch base 4 times a day, but it's very short. But I assume that helps in terms of. This isn't a softball question, but I assume that helps in terms of your integrating with what we do here.
Right. I think it's important to have meetings at least a few times a day, or at least, in fact, one time a day. Some places they're doing it less than that, and I think that can get complicated because then you don't know what your workers are doing, and your workers could be confused about what's going on. So I think that's something that's very important to do, is just check in with everybody, make sure they know what they're doing and have the resources they need. So I think that works well for us.
Very good. Well, thank you for that information. Poll question number 2. Will Section 1112 payments be included for SBA 7A and 504 loans made after October 1, 2020?
It's kind of a tricky question, Bob.
Well, they all are, Lance.
He likes to get people.
Yeah, go ahead, Lance. Let's see what the poll says first. Yes, 47, no 19, I don't know, a third. Go ahead, Lance. What do you say?
There's kind of a area that I call no man's land. That's after October the 1st and prior to February 1st. The way the law reads, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, they will not get CARES Act payments.
That's how I read it. Yeah. Now they could change that. The administrator could change it.
They could change it. We're waiting anxiously for some directives, but it has caused me, Chris, to pause some projects, as we were talking about earlier,
Right.
Until February the 1st. So January, if this is true, could be a light month in SBA lending. February should be an explosion of SBA lending.
Entirely possible. Yep. Unintended consequences again.
Chris, are you in the same situation?
We are in the same situation, and that we will probably try to delay things when we can, but we don't always have that ability to. Sometimes you've got seller deadlines on purchases, whether it's businesses or real estate equipment, etc. But yeah, when we can, it would make sense for us to hold off a little bit, because we want our borrowers to get that benefit of 6 months of P&I payments. I think that's tremendous. Obviously, as the lender side of things too, if it's a 7A loan, then you would also get 90% guarantees on those loans as well.
Well, and on a larger 504 deal or 7A, but on a larger deal, the CARES Act payments are $54,000 worth of payments.
That's right.
Pretty significant.
Yep.
The waiver of the fee too is significant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go to the next poll question, which is the guarantee and the borrower fees. Will they be waived? The question that we have is, when will they start being waived? Will they be waived after releasing the new guidance? Will they be retroactive? Do we know? This is really a best guess because we don't know, do we, Lance?
I'm hoping that we see they'll be waived as soon as the guidance is released. But the safe bet right now is still February the 1st until we see guidance.
Chris, yes, say a half, and I don't know, or a half. Chris, do you see SBA going retroactive?
I think there's a possibility. I mean, I think the congressional intent is there, and I don't think it was ever congressional intent to have the no man's land, as Lance is calling it. I think that's a fair characterization. So we'll see. We'll see how empowered the administrator is, and if she wants to go back and sort of fix some of these, which I think most of us in the industry would love to see her do that.
Katie, you've been reading this stuff. What is your sense of Congress? Do you think that SBA will go back retroactively, or we'll stick to the letter of the text?
Based on Congress, I think they certainly were thinking along the lines of having something retroactive, but it is really up to the administrator to determine how this is going to happen, and I really don't know what she's thinking when it comes to this. So I don't even really have much of a guess there.
I none of us do. So questions. John has a question. If an SBA loan is approved after September 30th, in other words, fiscal year 2021, but before the end of the calendar year, will we make the first 6 months payments, Lance?
The answer right now is no.
Brian wants to know, when do we expect to have the 90% guarantee and borrower fees waived?
The answer right now is maybe next week, but February 1st is, if you're giving odds, February 1st is a sure thing. It could be earlier.
Chris, do you see any effort by the lobbying groups? I know you're involved with a number of them, working with SBA, or are they just in their cubicles or in their undisclosed locations putting together these regs without input from industry?
No, I think they're definitely getting input from industry. The question is if they're actually in DC these days. I'm hearing from people that were getting out of town as of yesterday and today, before who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So no, I'm serious. I've actually heard from a couple folks who said, you know what, they're telling me not to come to my downtown office. So I said, maybe that's smart. They're definitely getting input. I mean, let's face it. I mean, if you look at the text of what is now law, I mean, that's most of those things that relate to small business are not things that congressional staffers just come up with on their own. They're getting input from the industry.
Yeah.
It's very specific. So some of these things are tried and true mechanisms to try and jumpstart the small business economy. So they're definitely listening. But at the end of the day, it's where congressional intent stops and where regulatory interpretation begins. That's really,
Well,
that's the crux of it. And
yeah, I really hope in terms of regulatory interpretation, Chris, that look, the whole purpose of this is getting money to employers so they can
That's right.
employ people.
That's right.
Not to parse the English language in terms of is it September 1 or December
Right.
1 or whatever. But we got to get this money out there, Chris. I mean,
I agree. I agree, and you don't need lenders making these decisions to, hey, if I delay a few weeks, maybe I'll be in a better spot, maybe my borrower will be in a better spot. No, you just want things to go back to functioning as they should, get the money out, help as many people as we can, and hopefully stabilize the economy and actually start getting back on the path of growth again.
Jim asked the question, if a borrower is starting a catch-up plan following the deferment, they begin CARES Act or new stimulus payments, how is the payment difference being collected?
That is a tough
question. Yeah.
Good question, Jim.
We don't know the answer yet, Jim.
We don't know the answer. Yeah. But a very insightful question. There are so many things that when you look at CARES Act payments, when you look at the fee waivers, the new game, there's so many questions, scenarios that could pop up that will be outside of what we know right now.
Barry wants to know, if not E-Tran, then how will PPP second draw be submitted? Well, it will be E-Tran, right?
It'll be E-Tran, I think.
It probably will, but I mean, I've heard, and maybe this is coming from other folks have heard the same thing, which is there may be a different portal entirely, and that they're working on that apparently, just dedicated to the second draw loans. So we'll see.
Galen asked a great question, which has to do with limits. It says, hey, I have a borrower who exceeded $2 million in round 1. Are they eligible for round 2 or round 3, or is that $2 million a max?
Wow.
They'll be eligible.
Great questions. We don't have
these are really good questions. They'll be eligible if they meet the other stipulations under 300 employees, 25% revenue reduction.
Oh, you think so, Chris? Okay.
No, I do. I do think they'll be eligible, but they won't be able to get more than $2 million for their second draw PPP loan. That will be the max. And by the way, just a little sidebar on round 2, round 3, first draw, second draw. There's so much of that verbiage out there. I think as an industry we got to try to rein it in a little bit and try to use the terms that I think are what people will stick with in the media and in the legislation, which is we got to start talking about these things as first draw and second draw.
I still like them.
Arguably, this is round 4, actually, if you want to be truthful. And I know you love the British bounce back.
I love the British bounce back scheme.
Well, that's a good question, Galen. I don't know, Lance, you agree? You concur with
I think you're on point. The law talks about the maximum loan amount in this round of PPP. Right. It does not talk about previous amounts received. So I think they'll still be eligible.
Yep.
Ian wants to know, do you believe SBA requests for reconsideration approvals will increase as an alternative to obtain additional funding for EIDL loans?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps.
Yeah.
Raman asked the question, 504 lenders charge 1.5 points on third-party loans, of which half goes to the CDC. Do you think the entire 1.5 points should be waived?
Well, first of all, I'm not so sure that's entirely accurate. I think third-party lenders, they have to pay 50 basis points on the amount of the third-party loan, the first lien loan. That's the SBA fee. That is what's going to be waived. The 1.5, this whole notion that some of it goes to the CDC has its own separate list of fees that they charge, and from one CDC to another, depending on how big they are, how involved they are, what their particular type of CDC, it differs on how much they're actually charging for these things too. So this is a question with a lot of nuance to it, and I don't think it's a straightforward answer.
Yeah, and I wish we could be more definitive, but we're giving you the best that we got. Let's skip the next one, Michael. Let's on Barry's call. Lance, can you give the emails again? I'm stuck. What do I do? Who do I contact?
Chris, go ahead if you want to. It's ppforgiveness@sba.gov.
Yeah. And if you have, there is a couple individuals who helped us on some of these esoteric situations where SBA made a mistake. and you've got two different PPP loans that were made to the same borrower, one by one lender, one by another lender, and how to work through that. If someone wants to reach me offline, I can give them the information on that. But that's a whole different pathway to go down, and you got to work to find the right folks at SBA to deal with on that.
We get these questions in terms of things going through the dark, the black hole of Calcutta and never to be heard from again. Are those the exceptions, or are they? Are those just one-offs that bad things happen, or is this a more of a more prevalent?
Well, what are you asking, Bob? Are you asking if?
I guess what I'm asking is, we have a deal, and it's just dropped off the face of the earth.
Right.
The SBA doesn't respond. We can't get anything. We don't know what's going on. I'm hoping those are one-offs and not a.
They're one-off.
Yeah. But it does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you have to be persistent.
Well, it's just like, in discussion of reinstatements, when I was at the servicing center, it's possible that someone could approve a reinstatement at the SBA center and not go back and reinstate the loan. That's why I encourage participant lenders, when you do a reinstatement, it gets approved, put a tickler in your Outlook calendar to go back a week from then and just make sure it's current status in SBA's E-Trans system.
Katie, what do you see happening in the next 24 hours? Talk about a loaded
Well,
question.
that 10-day deadline, if we did our math right, should be tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get some kind of guidance coming out in the next 24 hours or so. We are going to be watching the news and watching to see if anything comes out. I think there might be some things that are not exactly the guidance for this next round of PPP that might come out a little later. But the stuff that's for this next round of PPP, I would expect to be coming out in the next 24 hours.
Good. Address real quickly, Lance, we're going to be doing a webinar. We think we can do it next Tuesday. What are your plans in terms of, we think we'll have all the forgiveness answers done by then. Is that your thinking?
It's possible. Yeah. We need to.
And if we don't have it, we'll move it. How's that sound?
Yeah, that is a definite possibility. If we get the information, we'll be ready to go talking about PPP forgiveness.
But we are going to definitely talk about your 2021 review with all the other changes, that we have enough solid information for what is happening and that is in place.
Well, on the forgiveness for the smaller loans, I'm sorry to interrupt, Bob, but that new form, the one pager that's supposed to come out for the blanket forgiveness, the 150 and below, I think SBA's got another couple weeks on that before they're technically.
Yeah, it's not next week, Bob.
Yeah, it's like the 25th or something, I think.
They had 17 days on it.
Yeah, so we'll see.
I don't know. We might not see it.
Postponing
Well,
that
this just in from Russell. Russell says SBA knows they're late. They're saying just bear with us. So
yeah,
so
well, they got a little bit on their plate right now.
Yeah. Well, what I appreciate is I know that you have professionals there who are going to be out of a job in a couple of weeks. And, unfortunately, they are professionals and they're working hard to get this done. So I appreciate that. And I know all of the industry appreciates that. It's got to get done. It's got to get done. Well, very good. Well, thank you all for your input. I appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Talk to you tomorrow.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.